We're going. We're live. Hello. Thomas Metal 75 here once again on a Wednesday night featuring the beers from the Brooklyn Brewery. We have, as always, Michael Komarov, which is live in Brooklyn, New York. And we have William Kepley, who you've seen on many examinations on this channel and with Jay Terrio. And today, again, is the beers from the Brooklyn Brewery. And I have the classic standby from Brooklyn, their flagship, since I've had it numerous times on tap. I've never reviewed it on my channel, so I said, why the hell not? Brooklyn Lager, which is a Vienna-style lager, extremely similar to Boston Lager from Sam Adams. What do you have, William Kepley?
I have the Bel Air Sour.
Ooh. Interesting. And what does Michael Komarov have this evening?
I have their Sriracha Ace.
Ooh. That's a Saison, correct?
That's a Belgian-style Saison.
Excellent. Excellent. So,
should we crack our beers open? Has everybody opened theirs yet?
No, let's do that. Brooklyn Brewery, by the way.
I got some smoke out of mine.
Let's see what I get. The Brooklyn Brewery is, they say on their website, let's see here. I'm trying to find some information as to when they, history. Here we go. They started in, well, they all came together. That started the Brooklyn Brewery in around 1984. So they're much more of an older player in our craft beer scene, which is nice to see that they've still survived and people still, obviously like what they do.
I know a little bit of their history. One of them was a correspondent in the Middle East in a country where they didn't brew beer. So
wow.
He was forced to brew his own beer, came up with some interesting recipes, and when he came back to the United States with his friend, who is more of like the business part of the operation, formed their company in Brooklyn, New York, not that far from where I live. But it's interesting.
Excellent.
Most of their beer is brewed in Utica, New York, other than their specialty items.
Nice. So I'm going to pull up the chat, and we have the chat live if people want to.
Is anybody on watching, or you can't?
We just have Tyler Mansell. So hello, sir. Actually, they say here on the Brooklyn Brewery website, on May 28th, 1996, Mayor Rudy Giuliani cut the ribbon at the grand opening of the new Brooklyn Brewery Brewhouse Tap Room and offices in Brooklyn. So there's the actual date of their big start. So there you go. Brooklyn Lager here is only a 5.2% alcohol by volume beer. And again, it's a Vienna style lager. On the website, they're calling it a American Amber Lager. And it's got, they don't even tell you what kind of IBU range that this one has with it, but they're using Athenium, if I'm saying that right, Cascade, Sapphire, Vanguard, and Hallertau Middle Few hops. And it's year-round. So if you get it now, it's in season. There you go. How about the what are you getting on the look, appearance, and smell there, William Kepley, of the Bel Air Sour?
It had a little head. It's sort of dissipated by now, but this is a very light golden beer. Probably the SRM would be probably about 5 or 6 on this, but a lot of tropical and citrus on the nose. Right up, it hits you right away. That's the dominant characteristic I've gotten so far on this. So,
yeah, your beer is called the Brooklyn Bel Air Sour. It is a 5.8%. They're just calling it sour ale on their website. American two-row pale wheat malt and carafoam. for the malts, and they're using their proprietary lactobacillus strain, which I believe is a type of a yeast that, that is, when you brew the beer, it's an open fermentation tank. So whatever is going on in the air, that's ends up being what the yeast is eating, and that's kind of what creates its sour flavor.
This is by the BJCP guidelines. This is an American wild ale, which is a specialty classification. These beers don't fit into any of the 27 classic styles.
Sure.
And here's a description that I right here. It says, sometimes Belgian influenced American wild ales are beers that are introduced to wild yeast or bacteria, such as Brettanomyces, which short for Brett, which literally means in British, it means British fungus. And it says this introduction may occur from oak barrels that have been previously inoculated, mashed into the beer, or gained from various sour mash techniques. Regardless of which and how, these little creatures often leave a funky calling card that may be quite strange, interesting, pleasing to many, but many often deemed undesirable. So I guess I'll find out. I've never had this style before.
Does it have any kind of a funky nose to it? Do you detect any of the sour notes?
It's mostly, no, it's very pleasant, sort of a citrus tropical. If I didn't know beforehand, after reading this description, I wouldn't have suspected anything. And so, it should be interesting for me.
Nice. Michael Komarov, what are you getting on the appearance and the nose of the Sriracha Ace?
You can see this in the light. The head has dissipated, but there's still what's left, about a half a finger, and it's a white head, and it's very hazy in terms of the, I don't know if you can tell in the light, it's hazy and kind of golden, I guess, or dark orange. And the nose, it's weird. It's got kind of a Saison type nose, but you can smell the yeast that they use in the nose as well. So it's not just a typical Saison. It's like a yeasty kind of Saison
nose.
And the alcohol is 7.2, which is a little bit high for a Saison.
Mm-hmm. So they're using, it says on the Brooklyn Brewery website, they're using, for their farmhouse Saison, the Sriracha Ace, which is the name of the hops that they're using, which actually is named after the Sriracha region of Hokkaido, if I'm saying that right, in Japan. And it was developed by large Japanese brewers in the late 1970s. And they describe it as being a cross between a Brewer's Gold and a Japanese Bellaki No. 2 and French Saz hops. So you're supposed to be able to get lemony herbal notes out of that beer, which I've had it once, and I'll reserve judgment until you try the beer.
I guess there's a mild citrus here, but it's a secondary smell. It's not a lead.
Yeah.
It's not a lead nose.
Right. So that's what they use. That's the only hop that they're using, and they're also using German Pilsner malt and their house Belgian strain. So that's pretty cool. So what else do you get? Anything else in the nose?
That's about it. But we've all had Saisons before, so it's got that kind of classic Saison kind of smell to it.
Right. So the beer that I'm drinking once again is the Brooklyn Lager, and the Brooklyn Lager is their amber lager, their Vienna style lager. It might have had more of a head and more of a narrow or more of a wider rimmed glass, or maybe should I say a narrow rimmed glass. This is the Stella Chalice. It's basically just an amber gold, kind of a rusty copper. Maybe, amber gold is a good description. It's got I guess an off-white kind of a head for what's there. Not much is there. There is a lot of bubbles there is some bubbles streaming, not a whole bunch, and it's pretty see-through and opaque. They're using in this beer, if I can get that information out, American Two-Row, Munich, and Crisp. Never heard of Crisp for the malts. And like I said, Athenium, Cascade, Sapphire, Vanguard, Hallertau, Mittelfew. and it's 5.2% alcohol by volume. And I guess Vienna lagers are traditionally characterized by a malty aroma and a light malt sweetness. The malt aroma and flavor should have a noticeable degree of roasted and or slightly roasted malt character, and with low to medium low bitterness on the hops. And that's exactly all the stuff I'm getting out of the nose. There's a lot of citrusy, there's a lot of like orangey or like light grapefruity kind of citrusy notes. It kind of has that toffee caramel note, almost like an ESB in a way, to be completely honest. There is a lagering kind of a crisp feel to the yeast strain in there. And I mean, that's maybe a little bit of earthy grassiness, but if I was blindfolded, unless the fact that I can tell that it's kind of a crisp nose, it almost has that light ESB kind of a English nose about it. So yeah, very good nose and start so far. So I guess drink a beer and let's describe the beer we get.
Cheers.
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 Cheers to 4 viewers. What's up, people? Hello, Falco's Beer Reviews. Cheers.
Tyler said he might come on later if he's not busy at work to say hello.
Excellent. So, yeah, let's start with the Bel Air Sour with William Kepley. What's going on in the flavors of that beer, William?
A lot of tartness up front, more so than I anticipated. Not a sourness, really. It's more of a tartness that follows through. And it's definitely different than most of the beers I've drank, but it's pretty refreshing, actually. But the Bel Air name, there's a ritzy neighborhood in Los Angeles, Bel Air, and I can see people, sitting out and drinking this, like on a summer day, especially style of beer. This is the antithesis of something like a working man's beer, in a sense, I guess, the way it's probably marketed too. But it's different. I find it refreshing, and so far so good. I'll take a follow-up sip on it.
Excellent. Michael Komarov, Sriracha Ace Saison. How's that going?
Okay. The first taste again is reminiscent of other saisons that I've had. Again, you can taste the yeast. The yeast is kind of the lead thing I can taste. Very pleasant. Kind of a little bit of a mild funk, but it's not a sour funk. It's more of a yeasty funk. It goes down very easy for a 7.2% beer as well. You have to be careful with this one. Drinks kind of like a session beer is what I'm trying to say. You can't really taste the alcohol.
Sure.
And that's always dangerous.
So far, so good. Excellent. Yeah, Brooklyn Brewery. Brooklyn Lager. They say on the bottle it's a pre-prohibition style kind of a beer of theirs. It is, they say they dry hop the beer with whatever hops that they're using. They don't specify, unlike on Sam Adams' website, they don't specify what is used for bittering, versus what's being used for dry hopping. But in general, I think that the mouthfeel is medium, but it's on the very light, it's on the lightest edge, carbonated as hell. It's on the very lightest edge of medium you can get.
So you'd almost say it's intensely light, almost medium kind of thing.
I think it's straight up medium, but it does have some light watery characters when it finishes. It's a pretty dry finish. I'm getting a lot of these toasty malt notes to it. Like maybe like a toasted brown bread kind of a note to it. Like I said, in the nose, it's reminding me of an English kind of a ESB where it has those caramel and those toffee notes, followed up with some of that citrusy note from like oranges maybe, and some grapefruit in there a little bit. So as some might say about an ESB, it kind of has that very light marmalade kind of a taste to it. I don't think it's quite as heavy in the malts as an ESB would, nor is it quite as bitter as that. This isn't really a hugely intensely bitter beer, but what I'm getting is a spicy hop note to it, a grassy hop to it, an earthy green grassy hop to it. There definitely is, like I said, some citrusy notes to it. There's a little bit of a piney, kind of an oily resin to it, but that is not even really the star of the show. I think that toasty, citrusy malt is the big star of the show. It's well carbonated to highly carbonated, but well carbonated in this bottle. It is very crisp, as I'm saying. It's pretty clean. I would say it's a semi-dry to a clean finish. And yeah, it's refreshing as all hell. At this point in time, between Brooklyn Brewery lager and Boston Beer Company Sam Adams Boston Lager, if those were to go head-to-head, like a lot of people kind of compare the two Vienna lager styles together, I would say so far the Sam Adams is a little bit more full. I can't say it's better, but it's fuller and more rich-bodied than the Brooklyn Lager beer. But this is a great session beer, as Michael Komarov said. So I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the discussion and think about a rating on that one. But so what's everybody's experience with the Brooklyn Brewery beers? Let's start with William Kepley. What's your experience with their beers?
It's my first experience with the brewery. First of this style and first with the Brooklyn Brewery. By the way, this one is 5.8% alcohol by volume. But
and does it taste that way? Or do you not find that 5.8 is really that high for what you typically would drink?
There's really no, the alcohol is not the, first thing that comes to mind when you drink this. And, it's really not, neither is the hops for that matter. This is more of a, it is, I'm searching for some descriptions, like I have no reference point because I haven't had one of these before. So there's things I'm tasting, but I can't quite, come up with the exact word for it. Sometimes the word funky might be used. There is something different about this, definitely, than any other beer I've had. And someone like myself who drinks a lot of malt forward beers, which I like the malt forwardness of the beers.
Yeah.
And this is not it by a long shot.
It's not malt forward.
No, it's not malt forward. It's very tart, very mild. There's no punchy flavor like you get from like a juicy IPA or a beer with a strong malt presence. As I take each sip, I'm sort of taking mental notes on it, but it definitely is different than anything I've had. I'm glad to try, to step out of the comfort zone, so to speak, to try something different.
That's kind of what's great about beers, that there's so many different breweries that make so many different beers. You could go probably every day, or possibly maybe not every day. Maybe you can go practically every day and every week trying one new beer till the day you die, and you would still not have tried probably every beer known to mankind. So we're looking at the beers of XYZ because there's so many different ones. Let's just look at them, right? Cool.
William, does the finish stay tart when it gets to the end in your final taste, or does the tartness start to fade out?
This tartness is very consistent. It's all the way through.
Okay.
It hangs around to the finish.
Okay.
And then some.
Okay, that's important. That's important. I guess if they're trying to get that effect, they accomplish that.
It is. It's very, that's the, if you had to sum this up in one word, it would be a tart, citrusy flavor.
Very carbonated there. The Brooklyn Lager. Wow, holy crap. I said it doesn't necessarily, I'm going to go to Michael Komarov really fast here in a second, but it doesn't feel. I mean, a little bit. It doesn't feel like it has as much carbonation, but
get the phone.
But it really does have obviously the carbonation feel in this in the palate and stomach region. But I'm curious because it's called Brooklyn Brewery, and we have Brooklyn's own Michael Komarov in the examination tonight. Explain, if you will, your experience with the beer and the beer Brooklyn Brewery beers in your area.
I think I've probably tried almost everything that they make over a period of time since they've been in business. I guess the best way to sum it up for me is you either really like them or you really don't. They make a lot of things that are not really that wonderful, yet they make the Sriracha Ace is excellent. I really like this. I've had the Bel Air that Williams had, and I thought it was an enjoyable beer. I've had the Brooklyn Lager that you've had, and I found that to be an enjoyable beer. I think the Sam Adams is a little bit more substantial. It has a little bit more punch in it.
Yeah.
And I rate it a little bit higher, but I guess you could get people who like the Brooklyn better. You know, those both ways. I've been to the brewery several times. It used to be that they try to draw people to the brewery. As they've gotten bigger, it's now less and less. Like, you used to be able to go to a tour and they would give you a free beer, and that's all gone.
All right.
That's all gone. I actually have here, and I can show it to everybody. Where is it?
Please do, if you like.
Let's see if I can find it. Because whenever you look for something specifically that you want to, I got it. Okay, these are the little, like brewery chits that you get.
Hold it up a little higher. There you go. I see it.
Okay, so if you go to the bar there, you can get a 12-ounce beer with these.
Yeah.
And I don't go very often. It's in Williamsburg, which is about 7 or 8 miles from where I live.
So naturally not in Brooklyn at this point.
But it's a nice brewery, and if you go there on the weekends especially, and I guess they probably have hours on Friday evening as well, and they have events there. I've been to a couple of events there. It's a good place, and it's a good brewery. They probably make keg beer there. So in other words, if they're doing anything there brewing wise, they're doing keg beer, which is probably sold in the New York area and probably in New England as well. Stuff that can be shipped fairly close. Mm-hmm. Most of their bottling is done in Utica, New York, at the same brewery where Saranac is made.
See, I was going to ask you, if you go to their flagship or you go in the Williamsburg area in New York State there, I was going to ask you, or I'm going to ask you, I should say, is does it have, I don't know what the terminology I want to use is, but does it have a bigger brewery type feel and atmosphere to it?
Well, in Williamsburg, exactly where it is, they probably have more of the local bar owners who all have at least 1 or 2 Brooklyn products on tap. So they do push it in the neighborhood. But the problem that they're having now is because of the emergence of all the new breweries in Brooklyn now, Other Half, and some of these other ones, they're all getting distribution too. And you only have so many taps you can use. So Brooklyn obviously is going to get some distribution based on their past and the fact that they've been in the market. They also have a brewery, I think, in Sweden now as well. So,
damn.
And like I say, it's brewed upstate New York, but I would say the best way I can sum it up, it's a decent brewery. I wouldn't say it's a great brewery, but it makes decent beers.
So I got a question for William Kepley. Now that you've heard from the local source what his thoughts and opinions and how he sees Brooklyn Brewery as a player in that part of the country where they're from, what do you take from that? Do you hear his description of Brooklyn Brewery and go, oh, well, they're a big beer. How can you even consider that craft beer? Or, oh, they're getting too big for their britches. Or what's your thought in hearing about Brooklyn Brewery? Does that make you more excited about trying their beers, or are they getting too big for their own good?
I wouldn't shy away from it because the size of the brewery. I mean, that's irrelevant to me for the most part.
Yeah. I asked that
I'll
because
try.
most people would mention that for as big of a brewer they are and for as wide of a distribution that they get.
One thing I did look on the Beer Advocate here for the ratings for the sour ale. It gets a very good rating, 3.92 out of 5, very good.
Yeah.
For 206 ratings with only a 9% deviation, which means that universally most people like it. They're only, out of the 206 ratings, only 14 were below 3.5.
That's pretty good.
That's very impressive. And Rate Beer rated at 84 overall and 44 for the style.
So are you somebody that has had or can ever remember actually having sour beers, or this is your first introduction into a sour type of an ale?
I've never had a specialty type beer, a sours or a saison, or it's definitely one thing. As I took a few more sips, I was picking up the wheat malts in this because I have had Belgian whites. So it's the more, each sip, it's opening up a little bit now. The different, the flavor characteristics of it, and I am picking now up that wheaty malt from a Belgian white.
So sour beers, tart ales, whatever you want to call them. Does the Bel Air sour ale make you disinterested in sour beers, more interested to try sour beers, or you're kind of indifferent to sour beers at this point? What's your thought right now as a newbie into this sour craze?
At this stage, I would say indifferent because there are so many styles that I would like to try. This wouldn't be the next, I wouldn't race out and buy a 6-pack of this right now.
Right.
Nor would I really be that in investigating this style right now. I'm not saying I wouldn't be in the future, but it was interesting. I'm glad I tried one.
Yeah.
And it was good the fact that the best buy on this was August the 5th, 2018. Yeah. So I'm getting the best representation of this beer that's possible. And that's nice to get fresh beer because I saw beers today that were a year and a half old.
I feel
so I was fortunate that I got a good one.
I entirely agree with you on that. I feel like a bigger operation, so I feel like two different ways. I feel like number one, the bigger operations and the so small, they're like your local town brewery. Those two kind of entities in the brewing market, they kind of seem like those are the people that can keep beers fresh for the consumer. It kind of seems like, I don't know, like a Ballast Point's pretty big, and I'm trying to think of another brewery. I guess Shipyard at this point, but those are the beers I prefer. Shipyard or Ballast Point, but not the point. But I picked those two in general because they're not like huge. They're not like too large for their own good, but I feel like they're big enough where they should be able to put out a lot of beers in the markets that they distribute the beers in, and they can still seem like in most markets they have some unforeseen age on them for some reason, and it's mind-boggling why. But I feel like for all of us here, it seems like we get Brooklyn Brewery beers fairly frequently, almost to the point where it almost with our bottling dates, it almost seems like they not fly off the shelves, but they come and go often enough where they can keep these dates, and they produce enough where they can keep fresh beers on the shelf. So as far as my local area, not usually having the best of dates for beers. If this was best before May 2018, apparently Brooklyn beers are doing pretty good in my area to keep them fresh that way.
I was going to say, Eric, I was going to say to William, he has to be an open-minded beer drinker because people who are into macros and who drink a lot of malt-forward beers, sours would kind of be like the antithesis, the other side, and he's willing to give it a shot to see how it compares, and that's a good sign. He's willing to experiment, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, and to go back to sour beers really quickly, so in 2 weeks, in two
And that's my wife. She's supposed
in
to
two
get the
in
phone.
two
Oh, that's great.
Wednesdays. In 2 Wednesdays, we're actually going to review sour beers as a topic. So in 2 weeks, you have another opportunity to pick up a sour beer and to try it for the second time in your life and see what you think.
Before I saw this one today, I was tempted by their Imperial Stout, the chocolate, the Brooklyn Brewery, and that's the one I almost picked it up. Then I happened to looked over there, and they were putting these on the floor.
Oh!
I went over there and saw. I said, well, like I said, this is the best representation I can get for this, being as fresh it is. So I can always come back and get a stout, or if it's not quite as fresh, with a higher like 10% ABV, that's partly is a preservative.
Right.
Grab one of those in a couple of weeks or so.
Mm-hmm.
William, was the Imperial Stout their black chocolate stout?
It was the black. It was.
Ah, I forgot about that beer. That's good.
That's a high alcohol beer. It's very, very good beer.
10.1, I believe, if I.
Excuse me, but yeah, my experience is, and I'm trying to remember this. I don't remember specifically, but I turned 21 I'm only 29, so I'm going to be 30 in May. So do the math on that. But I've always seen Brooklyn beers around, and I've always seen them on the shelf, and I've always seen them in singles. So since I've been drinking beers, since I've been 21, I've been doing mix of sixes and trying beers, and I've always seen them, and that's how I kind of discovered that's how my introduction to Brooklyn beers has been more recently, and definitely relating to the Brooklyn Lager here, particularly, specifically, exclusively here. There's a local music venue in Rhode Island state capital of Providence, Rhode Island, that actually it caters to punk rock and heavy metal almost exclusively, but they always have a good selection of bottles, cans, and a lot of different draft beers. And they always have Brooklyn Lager on tap. And people buy that. Now, people buy it that are craft beer fans like myself, but a lot of people buy the Brooklyn Lager that are not big craft beer fans, and particularly aren't even really interested in that kind of beer, but they seem to buy Brooklyn Lager, and I guess because it says lager, they at least try it. So that the word lager in the name helps them sell the beer, right? But I have a buddy of mine that's sort of a really good friend of mine. He's sort of on and off. Depending on what the craft beer is, he will be really into it. Generally not so much, but it kind of depends on what the beer is. He will always buy this, and he even talks very, very highly of the Brooklyn Lager as it being a very smooth, easy drinking beer. And that is 100% correct about the beer. It is very smooth, easy drinking. Sam Adams Boston Lager is very similar to this. So if you've never had Brooklyn Lager and you've had Sam Adams Boston Lager, in the back of my brain, the only thing that's really different is I find that one to be slightly more hoppy, malty, and has a bit of a bigger body than this. If you want more of a lager crispness to it and a little bit easier drinkability to the beer, Brooklyn Brewery is good for their Brooklyn Lager. And if I had to give it a rating, I mean, it's probably right smack dab in the middle for like an 80. I want to give it a high B, so maybe 84. But then again, like I say, what I like better about the Boston Lager is it's got more malt body, it's got more maltiness, more hops, and it's just a bigger bodied beer. So I guess 84 would be my rating on that. But if you had to kind of give it a rating, William Kepley, what would you give the Bel Air Sour?
I can only speak to do I like it or don't like it. Like I said, I haven't had these, and I would put it on the scale. Do I like it or don't like it? It would be a 2.5, which would be I'd probably be just as likely not to have it again as to try it again. For me, it's right there. It's just in the middle.
So that's 2.5 out of 5.
Right. just based on did I like it or didn't like it, because I'm not qualified. You know, like I said, I don't have anything really to judge this by as a reference. You know, I read some of the stuff about the style of this beer, but it's a star. And another, there's a description about this says Bel Air Sour is racy and maybe even a little bit dangerous, but also effortlessly cool, breezy, and undeniably compelling, which sort of goes in with that Bel Air theme. The ritziness of it a little bit, you know, like in LA. So I can see this being drank on a lot of yachts, maybe.
Is it summertime? Is it like a Dodge car? with the breeze blowing in your hair, you know, enjoying the good life. I could see this being a very popular beer in the summertime. Enjoying the good life with a Bel Air Sour. All right,
that's right.
I dig it. Yeah, so again, I'm going to give Brooklyn Lager, as of right now, my thoughts could change next time I drink it, but as of today, Michael Komarov and folks, 84 out of 100. But I'm curious for your thoughts and conclusions to the Sriracha Ace.
Okay, I'm going to give it a 90. I'm going to give it a 92.
Yeah,
which with me is an A-, because I think my straight A level is about 94.
Okay,
so it's a little bit less than. And if you ask me what are the deficiencies in it, why it's not an A or an A+, because the alcohol is controlled. That's a good thing, and that's what raises it up to where it is. And I do like the funkiness, and I do like the yeasty qualities in it. It fades a little bit. The taste doesn't stay consistent through the whole beer, although it's mostly there.
Is it a beer? I don't know how much it's warmed up since you opened the beer, but I feel like you've had this one a couple of times in the past. So do you ever remember or recall if it does in fact change in some of its flavor and complexion as it warms?
Maybe a little bit, but I don't know. That wouldn't. I mean, that wouldn't raise it or lower it for me.
Okay.
It's almost like when you try to nitpick between A-, A, and A+, it gets kind of hard because I don't even know if there's a saison I've ever had that's an A+.
Oh.
I really don't. I really can't think of any offhand.
I can tell you one right off the top of my head, and that is the Victory Helios Saison. It's one of the best beers I've ever had.
I actually think I like that better than this. That would at least be an A for me. So I do like that better. But I can't say saisons are the thing I've had the most of either. You know, it's not a style that I have all the time. I'm more of an IPA stout guy. If you have to look at my two primary things that I like barrel aged.
I would definitely put, for me, the top three styles that I enjoy most of the time. I say top three, right? Those New England IPAs, right? I guess New England IPAs, well, I can at least tell you the top two are definitely New England IPAs and saisons, bar none. I find it interesting now that we look at this, that the both of you guys chose a Belgian style beer, and now that William has heard all about the Sriracha Ace Saison that Michael Komarov is drinking, it only reinforces, it only helps to understand, if you do or not, congratulations, but that Belgian style beers can be so many different things. They can be really, really malty, really sweet. They can be that Trappist, quadruple dark beer, all the way to tart, sour, and light and fruity, all the way to Michael Komarov 7.2, easy sessionable kind of yeasty beer. It can be a lot of different things, which is cool about the Belgians.
William, I think you would like this, but I don't think you would like it much more than the one you have. I think it would be a kind of thing where it would be in the 2.5, maybe 3 range. You might, if you like the yeast in this, you would like it more than you maybe like the tartness. Because I don't know, have you had other yeasty beers? Because malty beers can be yeasty. You're not going to get yeast in macros though. So in other words, in the macros that you drink, you're not finding any yeast in that. I don't think.
I don't drink macros exclusively. I've drank quite a few ales lately. I like the IPAs. especially the ones in the 6.5 to 7.5 range that I find are very balanced. They give you the bitterness, but they also give you the strong malt backbone with some of
So
that.
you like the combination of the hops and the sweetness.
That to me, that strikes the sweet spot, like a Sierra Nevada Torpedo or a Dale's Pale Ale. I really like those a lot. And I like the ESBs and the Marzen, the Oktoberfest styles, things like the malt forwardness of those also. But yeah, but I'm getting more into the IPAs now quite a bit. I find the ones that, not really the sessionable ones, but the ones that get, that in that range where you get a nice balance of the malt sweetness and the bitterness, where it just strikes a very fine balance.
Are you able, William, to get any of these New England style juicy kind of things that a lot of companies are starting to do now? You're in southern North Carolina, right?
Central North Carolina. If you split the state in the middle, I'm right in the middle, the Triad region, Piedmont Triad. Okay. There are a couple of places I probably maybe could get some of those off the top of my. In Greensboro, I live just not far from there, a much larger town where they have a lot more options. And Total Wine actually has quite a pretty good beer selection, and they will let you split into 6-packs, which is really nice. That's how I was able to get a fresh single from this 6-pack rather than a single that maybe sat on the shelf for a year and a half, which I saw today. So that was nice.
Wow.
I probably could find something New England styles if I searched hard enough for it.
Because you might like that style, even though that style, generally speaking, is not as malty as the ones that you brought up. They tend to be more juicy and more, how should I say it? They can have some IBUs, but they don't push the, we've had this discussion, Eric, right, where 6 Point comes up with a 0 IBU beer, which is physically impossible, but it's not. It has a half an IBU or a little bit less than that. And Eric says,
I still don't get it.
Again, I had it. The party had it. I thought it was really good. They say they use something called hop bursting at the end of the beer in the final whatever. I'm not a brewer, so I don't know exactly how it's. I guess after you're almost ready to finish, they throw hops late in the boil, and those hops.
That's what she said. Oh no,
the taste, and that's it. I'm not a brewer though, and I'm not a brewer on TV either.
Yeah, that's why we need Lance the Lush, maybe. Or if this guy ever wanted to join us, reviewing Under Influence, Jordan from Alberta, Canada. He does a lot of brewing of beer, and within our niche of people, he seems to know the most about the brewing process. So one of these days, I'm going to have to get him over here on the channel. He was on 4:30.
He was on one, but he couldn't get his picture. We couldn't see him. All he had was his insignia.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah,
we heard him.
He's in what we call in parts of the United States that he lives in the quote boonies, where it's just like the signal and the connection to media sources, including cable and phone and internet, are so spotty that it's hit and miss for him. But he's really like in the thick of it.
We could hear him talk, but all that was up was his insignia, and it kept popping in
I
and out.
remember that.
That was the only time I can remember seeing him.
Yep. So I guess we've kind of dissected and talked about all these beers. Each one of them, I know I've had that Sriracha Ace before. I know I have. I've not had Bel Air Sour. May need to get that. I do like sour beers. Sometimes, and I can't explain why, I do crave sour beers from time to time. They're a good drinking experience. Brooklyn Brewery beer. It seems like they're a pretty major player in craft brewery enough to warrant their discussion, and I figured that enough people, only 3 of us, unfortunately, but I figured enough of us in the beer community can acquire Brooklyn Brewery and enough of us have heard of Brooklyn Brewery to warrant examining their beer. So, yeah, excellent chat with you all. We're going to go off air on the chat now, but the schedule coming up as I see it here for the beer examinations are going to be, we're going to stay right in Michael Kormaroff's local neck of the woods next week and do 6 Point Brewery beers. So that is next Wednesday.
That's the 28th.
Yep. I don't have the actual.
That's the 28th of February.
Yep. So after the 6-point review in 2 weeks, we're going to go down William Kepley's alley of Bel Air Sour Ale and review sour beers. I already have mine. It's called Silly Sour. Go figure. We're going to get silly on that day, but it's only on Wednesday. And then in 3 weeks, I have Samuel Smith beers written down. So there you go. And then tentatively, we can talk about that off air and figure that one out. William Kepley at one point came up the idea to do an examination based on the Facebook group, which is called, and I know Michael Komaroff's going to like this one because it's all the beers he loves. It's going to be called Regular Ass 2.0 Beers, a piss-free zone. Bring a macro brewed beer there, Mr. Michael Komaroff.
I can find one here.
Even if you consider Sam Adams or a bigger craft beer company to make a macro beer, I suppose we'll allow it for that day. So bring a Sam Adams if you want, sure. So, or a, I don't know, a Blue Moon White IPA, whatever you want. Make it macro related. So that's all we got for this week. Thank you for joining William Kepley and Michael Komaroff. Again, next week, 6-point beers, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Search for this channel, Thomas Metal 75. And as I always say, until next time, keep tasting those great beers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. And we will see you soon. Adios.